In this lesson, we will learn how to add predecessors and how to link tasks in Microsoft Project. This should work for all versions starting from Microsoft Project 2013 all the way to the most current versions of Project. Before we get started, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell so that you get notifications when I publish a new video. Here we start with a very basic project schedule that has just been converted from a simple list to having a structure. We have added duration in a previous video, and now we're ready to add logic. The whole schedule is expanded and we can see every task in the schedule. Now we need to add predecessors, also known as task links. You will also hear it referred to as dependencies or relationships. These all mean the same thing. In this video, we will only use one type of relationship or link type finish to start. In a later video, we will define this in a deeper dive on what are the different dependencies and relationships. Linking tasks is a step towards creating a realistic schedule model that will forecast dates accurately, as long as we have enough detail in our schedule as we give it realistic links and durations. According to the Planning and Scheduling Excellence Guide, also known as the PASIC, links show logical dependencies within a schedule. This logical ties in combination with the task duration, date-dependent constraints, and lags define the anticipated project workflow and are the foundation for the schedule, date calculations, and critical path. All discrete tasks and milestones should have at least one predecessor and one successor, as even one missing logical tie could adversely affect the project's ability to successfully execute the project. I'll leave a link to the PASIC in the description if you are interested in reading this document provided by the National Defense Industrial Association, better known as NDIA. In this lesson, we will learn how to create link between tasks, but we will not go into different dependencies and relationships between these tasks. In a later lesson, we will explore that topic a little bit more to keep this lesson simple. So just keep in mind that linking tasks with dependencies is a little bit more complex than we will get into here. If you want to continue learning about Microsoft Project to become a power user, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be notified when the next video is published. So let's get started. The best way to understand how tasks are logically connected in your program or project is best to talk with the subject matter experts or SMEs that are doing the work on your team. Then with that information, you can start linking the task. Let's assume that we have that information. Another thing to keep in mind is that in a schedule, we know that the starting task will not have a predecessor and the project completion task will not have a successor. So this one here, our starting task is line 3. We will not have a predecessor to go with it because it's starting, there's nothing that comes before it. And then here, product delivery is actually our finishing task, which means that there will not be a task after it, so it will not need a successor, but it will need a predecessor. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's highlight those tasks to make sure we always keep that in mind. So let's go ahead if we want to highlight it. This is just temporary. You do not have to do it on your schedule, but it will give us an indication that we need to look out that these are our tasks that are only going to have one type of link. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to go ahead and choose the color to highlight it. I'm going to highlight it in a yellow and I'm going to do the same thing to this bottom one. I'm going to choose it, right click on it, and then choose this yellow. Let's choose the same type of yellow. So let's go ahead and choose that yellow. And so now we know that those two, this one will not have a predecessor and this one will not have a successor. So usually when being taught about scheduling, they tell you to put the predecessor column and make sure to fill in all the predecessors. I will tell you that it makes it easier, at least for me, to see the predecessor and successor column. At the beginning, it might seem a little confusing, but you get used to it and then it makes a lot of sense and it's very useful. We also need to know that it is scheduling best practices to never put task links to summary tasks. Doing this will cause so many issues with the flow of your schedule and can get so bad that it causes circular references that are hard to trace. You want to avoid that type of headache as much as possible because sometimes it's really hard to solve even for a very expert scheduler. So these are summary tasks right here that are highlighted. We can add a column in here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to click on this column header, and then I'm going to right click and then choose insert column. And then I'm going to put in here summary. And if it's yes, that means it's a summary task. And if it says no, then it's not a summary task. Okay, so these right here that say yes, all these that say yes are summary tasks. You do not want to put a predecessor or a successor here. Okay, all the logic that we need is at the task level, not at the summary task level. So all discrete work needs to have predecessors and successors. So we can also highlight these if you want. I will highlight them here so we can easily see them. You don't have to do it in your schedule. It might help you understand better. So I'm going to choose the blue, and I'm going to make sure not to put predecessors or successors on the blue tasks. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's make sure that we highlight where we do not need any sort of logic. So this is a short schedule, so I can do it this way. There's a faster way to do it, but it's out of the scope of this course. I'll probably do a video of that in the future. So look out for that. Anyway, so we don't need any logic on the blue lines. On the yellow lines, we're going to need a successor. And for product delivery, we're only going to need a predecessor. Okay, so we can start putting predecessors and successors. If we click inside of the predecessor column, if we open it up, I do have Microsoft Project 2019 and higher. I have actually Project Online Desktop Edition. So this is the latest version. So if you have 2019 or later or Online Edition, you will be able to open up and see all your predecessors this way. If you have a version that's older, you will not see this. So you will not have a drop-down menu. So this is very nice because then you can start seeing and checking which one will be your successor. Right now it highlights that we're in line 4. So this will be our number 5 would be our successor. So I'm going to click on that. So you can see we're in task 4, and then it could let us choose any of our predecessors. So the predecessor for this one would be authority to proceed. So I'm going to click on authority to proceed and click out of it. And you can see now that it has put a 3 in here. And if you look at our line for authority to proceed, you can see now we have a successor. So that's all we need for this first line. It needs to have a successor. It does not need to have a predecessor. So let's go ahead and delete this because I'm going to show you a different way to do it. You could also type in the 3 in here and it will do the same thing for those of you that does not have Microsoft Project 2019 or Project Online. So I'm going to delete this again, and we're going to learn a new trick. We're going to go and right click in the Gantt. It has to be anywhere in the white part of the Gantt where you're going to right click and you're going to click on show split. If you're showing your timeline right now, it will not work. You need to unclick that first and then click show split. So click on show split. And now I have a split here. In this view, it's called task form. And then on this side, it has resource names. So if you have any resources, and then the predecessor name. I actually want to see predecessors and successors. So I'm going to change the view for this task form. So to do that, I'm going to right click on any part of this gray area. And then I'm going to pick one of these options. I'm going to pick predecessors and successors. And now notice that on this side, it says predecessor name. And on this side, it says successor name. So now we have both here. So for this one, for line 4, it tells me that the name of the task, the duration, and all of the other information. It also shows me the task type, which is fixed duration, and the percent complete. And right here, we can go ahead and click in here and then open it up, and we will get a list of all of our tasks. And then you can pick the task that you want to be your predecessor. So here I'm going to click on authority to proceed and then click OK. You need to click OK so it takes it. So I'm going to click OK. And now you can see that my predecessor is the authority to proceed for this task. And if you see up here in the schedule, you'll see that the predecessor for line 4 is line 3. Okay, so we can go ahead and go to the next one and write in again. Right here, I'm going to click on, I actually want this to have predecessor of ID 4, and I'm going to click OK. And now it put that link in there. And as you can see here in our Gantt chart, you can see now that we have these lines right here, these arrows. They signify that now these tasks have predecessors in them and successors. And so they are starting to move away and not be stacked on top of each other like they used to be. So keep an eye on the Gantt chart to see how your logic is looking in your schedule and if it makes sense. Sometimes looking at the numbers doesn't make sense, but looking at the picture here, it will make much more sense. Okay, so let me open up this bottom pane again. You can open it up as far as you want. Maybe we want it right here. So we're going to go back to systems requirements, and actually system requirements will start right after schedule and cost baseline. So I'm going to enter the line 5. Remember, we never use the blue lines that right here. There's summary tasks. We decided that the summary tasks, we're going to color them blue. We are not going to use this as a predecessor or successor for any of our tasks. So we're going to actually choose for line 7, the predecessor is line 5. So we can go ahead and put 5 in here in the ID for predecessor and then click OK. Then we can go through each one of these and do the same thing, or we can actually highlight these 3. They're going to come one right after the other. So you can actually select all 3, go to your task tab, and then go here in the middle. This group is called schedule. You're going to go to this link image or icon, and it says that it's linked the selected task. You can also use Control plus F2 button on your keyboard. You can link tasks so one can start until the other has finished. You can also link tasks in other ways, such as start to start link when 2 tasks need to start at the same time. So we're going to go ahead and click on that link, and now you can see that it automatically linked all of these tasks together. So now we have these 3. This first one comes after this. This line 7 comes after this line 5. And notice the summary task line right here. It actually corresponds to this grouping. So it moved away from the start of our project. It moved away with our task. That means that the summary will reflect the data that is within our grouping right here. So that's why you don't have to worry about summary task levels. They will roll up all the information and move accordingly. And you can see here, now it is 50 days that are consecutive. Before it said 20 days because they were each task was right on top of each other happening at the same time. So our schedule is taking shape. Now it has more, it makes more sense. It has more logic in it. You can still see if I close down this task form right here, that we have the rest of our tasks are still lying right on top of each other, starting at the same time. So we're going to have to add logic so that they can move where they need to be on the schedule. So let's move this up a little bit so we can see. So actually material planning, usually we start before any of this, maybe during preliminary design, but way before critical design. We can actually put it to come right after line 7. After we have the system requirements, we might know some of the material that we're going to need, especially the ones that have very long lead times. And so we need to start planning. So we're going to start planning actually after line 7. So we're going to put for line 11, we're going to put 7 as the predecessor. So we're going to go down here to ID and put a number 7, and we're going to click OK. So now you can see the system requirement is a predecessor to material planning. You could also see it right here. And if you look at the Gantt, you can see this arrow go from systems requirements down to material planning. So it's going to happen way before preliminary design, or at the same time as preliminary design and way before critical design, which is what we want. So I'm going to scroll this up so we can see it a little bit better as we're working through it. And so now we need to take care of long lead items. These two cascade, so I'm just going to go ahead and select them, go to my task tab and select link right here. I'm going to click on this link icon, and now they are linked together, and you can see it right here. All right. So if we know the long lead items, how long they're going to take a long time. You can see that if we plan ahead and we get them ordered, the material will come in right around the time that we have finished critical design and we're into production. So we can start production as soon as our design is complete or almost complete, while we wait for some long lead items, which is very good for our project. So if we keep on going and we go to cabin modification, we're going to start cabin modification once we get some of these materials. So I'm just going to assume, after talking to my project team, that we're going to actually start cabin modification after we get the long lead items. Usually we start them a little bit earlier because we will get material in before we get all the long lead items. But we're going to keep this simple because we're not going to make it more difficult than it needs to be. And this is only a schedule with 20 plus lines, so it doesn't represent a real project, especially not for aircraft modification or aerospace. So here I'm going to put as the predecessor, I can select this task and then hold my control key on my keyboard and then select this 14, line 14. And then I'm going to click on this link under the task tab and click it. And now you can see that it has linked it. Right here you can see that now cabin modification will come at the end of long lead items. So as you notice right here, if we look down here where it says the predecessor, we're using finish to start predecessors. And that's just one of the main types that we use. And that is the one we need to use most often during scheduling. Your schedules should have more than 85 to 90% of finish to start link types. So, but this schedule is going to have them, all of them, because we're keeping it simple. And then we're going to decide that all this production, all these tasks, they're going to come again cascade one after the other. They're going to waterfall. So I'm going to select them all and go up to my task tab and click on the link icon. And now we can see that our schedule has been linked all together how we want it, but now we can't see everything on our Gantt. So to see everything on our Gantt, we can go down here to do it quickly to zoom out. So we're going to zoom out. It's going to take away these customizations that I had put up here, but that's okay. Maybe in the future lesson, I'll show you how to customize the timeline. But for now, that's outside of the scope of this lesson. So let's zoom out. Let's go see if we can see it all again. Yes, we can. So we have all our tasks right there. So now you can see that our schedule is looking very good, that we can see that the dates are shifting like we want them to shift. And so now we're going to go ahead and make sure that our ground test will start when we're done with production. So we're going to use the cargo modification task as the predecessor to line 19. So we're going to put 17 right here under ID and click OK. And now you see that ground test will happen after cargo modification. So 7/30/2021. And then we'll start on ground test on August 2nd, 2021. So flight test and product delivery will happen one after the other. So right here, I'm going to put line 19 as the predecessor and line 20 as the predecessor to this one. Notice that we highlighted this last task in yellow because it's our finished task. So we're not going to have a successor for this task. So we can take off the highlighting of this because we already took care of it. It was just to remember. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the line 3. And we're going to take off the color. We're not going to need a predecessor for that one. Here, to take off this pane, bottom pane, you can go ahead and click again on your Gantt chart, right click, and then click on Show Split, and it will go away. So now we can clearly see our schedule. We can see that anything that's in blue, we do not have predecessors and successors because we don't need them, and it actually will give us issues with our schedule if we actually do that. You might not see it immediately, but then eventually you'll get a lot of issues. And you can see from our Gantt on the right side of our screen, we can see how all our tasks are linked. And if you have an eagle eye, you will see that this task, critical design, does not have a successor. And you can see it here. That's why it's important to have your successor column in, because then you can spot what you're missing from logic. Sometimes it's not very obvious with just a predecessor column. You could also see it in the Gantt if you have the arrows within it. Okay, so we're going to say that critical design is important and should have a successor of, I would say we'll do cabin modification. So we're going to put port 14 here. So I'm going to put 1-4. And you can see now that it has a line going down to cabin modification. So that looks like our schedule is well created and linked with the help of our project team. They gave us this information to link the schedule like this. And so now we are happy with our schedule. So that's it. Go ahead and play around with adding predecessors and links to tasks to your schedules. In this lesson, you learned how to add predecessors to your tasks by linking them logically in Microsoft Project. In a later lesson, you will do a deeper dive on the different types of relationships that tasks can have. See you next time.